So real quick, you have little evaluation sheets. If you wouldn't mind filling those out at the end and sticking them in that little box over there. I think that's it. All right.
Great, thank you.
It's all yours.
So my name is Jason Murdoch. I'm going to start, and we're just going to talk about an intro to communications class that we actually teach at Kelly Walsh in Casper. This is our second year teaching this class, and it's a class that we actually design together and then teach together. I'm a language arts teacher. I mainly teach freshman English at Kelly Walsh, and Mark is a history teacher who also mainly teaches freshmen. But our intro to communications class is actually a middle-level class, so it's mainly for juniors and seniors. And it is the role of media in society, which is a skill that we've noticed through our teaching career that our students lack an understanding of. And we didn't like the idea of sending kids out of high school and into either college or career without some basic understanding of it. And so it's something that we were able to fit in because the state had SCED code for an intro to communications class. And there was really very little parameter outside of what that could mean. And so we got to design the class from the ground up. So I'll briefly start with just kind of a rationale for the class, and I'm going to read to you the course description of the class that you would find in like our course catalog or in our course outline as well, which is an Intro to Communications course enables students to understand and critically evaluate the role of media in society. Film and television is an introductory survey course. As an English elective, it's a course designed to present students with a dynamic background of cinema and modern television, which can then be developed further in an advanced film class or at the post-secondary level. The course has an emphasis in history and cultural geography, and as such will analyze and interpret the historical, geographical, social, and cultural importance of film and television, as well as the individual films and series from their inception up to present day, and up to 18 genres comprise the content of the class. However, other genres can be expanded upon later. As you can see up here, one of the most prominent forms, or the more prominent form of communication is changing or evolving currently from interpersonal to mass media and social media. And we have issues, and I think all of you can bring to mind issues that have happened of people tweeting or posting on Facebook or posting on Instagram something that they probably should not have done. And it's one of those things that we see our students struggling with on a daily basis. It's something we would rather not have to see on a daily basis. But that's part of the brainchild behind why we want to come up with something like this. So we use film and television as our main medium, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But it truly is, the course is designed around teaching the role of media in society and having the kids be able to analyze that and understand exactly what they're dealing with a little bit better. So they get taught the power and efficacy of the media landscape, and the three main areas that we look at is differentiating between journalism and media, and also differentiating between message and medium, and of course the battle between art and commerce. And then they also look at film and television through an analytical lens, and that's something that we bring up with them each week. So each week in the class is a different unit of study, and Mark will talk about that here in a moment, but each week with each film that we watch or each episode of TV that we watch, they're looking for specific things that we get to kind of pre-introduce to them before, and then as the week progresses, we get to go deeper and deeper with that. And then, of course, we also look at the economic aspects. We can't really teach media in a vacuum, and there is such a massive economic impact with all of that, that we look at that as well. As far as the content and how we're able to teach a class at the high school level dealing with movies and TV. Drama is an essential form of literature in the English language arts standards. Wyoming is a Common Core state, but even before Common Core was our standards and benchmarks, drama was included. So Common Core state standards do include one-act and multi-act plays, written form and in film. So film is now actually written into the Common Core standards at the high school level for English language arts. So with that, film is a more accessible form of drama than like a play or a musical would be. And you don't have to look much farther than just out in this main lobby. There is a display just dealing with, because it's September, back to school DVDs and movies. And it's one that kids are just more accessible to. They go to the movies multiple times a year. They might go to a play once or twice, if that. So in being able to show them that a drama, something written for performance as opposed to just basic literature in a novel or a short story, allows us to have that conversation with them. And the students prefer it most of the time. I'm an English teacher at high school. If I say, hey, we can either read this book or we can watch this movie, what do you want to do? They're always going to say, well, we'd rather watch the movie, and then I make them read the book first. In film and TV, I don't have to do that, so we get to look at film as its own genre and its own art form, which also allows us to do things like we can talk about why movies are different than the books they're adapted from, which is something that a lot of people don't get, or they really struggle with that when you read the book and then you go to the theater and you watch it and the part you were waiting for isn't there, or they changed it, or the character isn't in it. So we get to have that conversation in a more expanded realm than just a very quick, like, okay, we're going to watch the movie, we're going to read the book, and then we'll just kind of move on. And then, of course, TV is ubiquitous at this point. It's kind of everywhere. We have TVs in our schools, like just showing like news and things like that. You can kind of see TV anywhere. You go to a restaurant, there's a TV. So being able to have that conversation about what they're watching and being a little bit more aware of, well, it's not just a sporting event, or it's not just a series, but all the other stuff that goes into it as well. And then we do, at the end of the semester, we actually compare film and television through all the units that we had studied up to that point using film. Which then takes us, of course, to our units of study. And one of the things that we look at, and actually the first thing that we look at, is script analysis. So we'll actually look at the difference between original screenplay and adapted screenplay. So we do get to have that conversation from the very beginning of, well, why are movies different even when they're based on something that's already out there? And then we get to have conversations, too, about things like public domain and rights to screenplays and things like that. So we do get to look at some of those economic factors from the very beginning. And with that, I will let Mr. Fleming kind of go into our units of study.
As far as like working with the economics, that's where I come into it, I guess, as a social studies teacher. A lot of that stuff so far is very like language arts heavy, and then I get really lucky because I get to talk about the fun stuff, I think at least. I get to talk about culture, we get to talk about why movies are filmed in different locations, right? Like as far as economics goes, there's tons and tons of tax laws for different states than different countries, and so a lot of films are filmed in Philadelphia, or they're filmed in Pittsburgh, or they're filmed in Louisiana, even though, or they're filmed in Canada, even if they're set in the United States or Wyoming. They're filmed somewhere else so that you can get those tax breaks, and so I get to talk about that type of thing, as well as culture creation, with movies mirroring things that are going on in the United States or in the world at that particular time, and vice versa, how movies can create culture and not just view culture. We look at the process of making a movie, I guess. And we're very clear that we have a drama department, and we are not part of that drama department. We also have a teacher who teaches like filmmaking and television production classes, and we are not that. We are everything else. We're why is doing that important? Not how to do it necessarily, but why is doing that important, and why is each step important? And so we've broken each week into these different units, where we get to look at one process of making a movie, but then we actually get to talk about why that particular process is important. Why is storyboarding important? Why is location scouting important? Why is lighting and visuals and sound and score and all of this stuff, why is that important? And how can you get a job as a high school kid, right? Like, your next step you might not realize has a bunch of stuff. Nobody thinks about, like, it's somebody's job to fly to Pittsburgh and take pictures of factories because that factory looks like what some director thinks it's supposed to look like. people don't realize that like that's a job that people get paid way more money than I'm ever gonna make to do that. And kids really, really don't ever think about that stuff. Or a kid who's really into art doesn't think that like, oh, you know what I can do? I love movies. I'm not good at making movies, but I can draw. So why shouldn't I be like a storyboard artist, right? Like a director can come talk to me and I can draw that stuff out and get paid way more money than Mr. Fleming's ever gonna get paid just by drawing, right? And like that's what I really, really like to introduce the kids to. So some of our units of study, and then I'm gonna go into, since we've broken them up into units, we'll go into like what our weekly schedule sort of looks like, because each week is sort of the same thing. We watch very pointed movies to get them something, to get something out of it. And so as far as like script analysis goes, that's 2 weeks. 1 week we watch an original screenplay, and the next week we watch an adapted screenplay. The original screenplay we watch Good Will Hunting. And so we get to talk about the making of that movie, which was like a 5-year process for 2 kids who were relatively young in Hollywood and had no name recognition behind them. They get to write this and they shop it around for a very specific reason, and then they become like Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, who are like superstars that everybody knows now. And so for original screenplay, that works really, really well. For adapted screenplay, we choose Shawshank Redemption, which is one of the weirder like adapted screenplays because it comes from a novella and gets expanded upon as opposed to being a novel that gets stuff taken away from it, right? And so we get to talk to the kids about that. And I guess we'll talk about the weekly expectations in class. So this is the hybrid course. We use Moodle as our online delivery system, and then we get to meet with the kids every single day. And so the kids have sort of these 2 different areas, and I'm sure many of you have taken hybrid courses before, and the kids haven't. High school kids just haven't done anything like that before. And so introducing them to like, hey, we're gonna meet, but when we meet, you're expected to have other stuff read that I haven't physically handed you, right? That's a skill that kids don't have, and it's one of the things that we're trying to sort of prompt. So as far as weekly expectations go, they have their readings that are posted on Moodle. Each week is a new topic, which again we'll talk about. And then that's Monday. We expect them to have read their stuff, and then they come in and sort of are prepped for that week, whatever it's going to be, storyboarding or whatever. Mr. Murdoch and I will sort of prompt them or prime them for like what they're supposed to be watching this movie for, what that particular week is. And then we'll start watching the movie. The kids have journals, and they have to be consciously and actively watching the movie the entire time. They actually take notes during the entire time. That we've given them this coded sort of note-taking system where they have to draw like questions, or they have to draw a star that means a particular thing. So we have this coded journal piece that they have that they finish watching the movie on Monday, and then we'll finish like in class, finish the movie on Tuesday, and then they'll have an exit pass that is a question that sort of prompts them for the discussion that we're going to have on Wednesday. And then on Wednesday, they have this notebook that has all kinds of questions and connections to the reading and connections to last week and different comments that they wanted to make. And then we have a day of discussion, which is another skill that kids aren't super great at. It's a communications course, and so them creating the content for the discussion, we think is a really, really important aspect of that. And so we're priming them to do the work before the discussion. And they're doing it in class, and some of them don't even realize that they're like priming their own questions for discussion beforehand. And Mr. Murdoch and I keep calling you Mr. Murdoch, and I can probably call you Jason in this setting. We have key points on Wednesdays that we want to hit, right? And so when the kids bring something up, we interject and we say, hey, this is a fun story from this particular thing, or hey, you might not have known this, or this is why that particular shot was like that, or this is the story behind Frank Darabont getting to actually make the Shawshank Redemption and then getting to make the Green Mile, and like getting to make all of these important Stephen King movies, right? This is the reason for that, because he was able to adapt that screenplay so well. At the end of Wednesday, we then give them like their assignment for the week. And their assignment for the week is going to be a project and a presentation. Their project and presentation have to, or do fall within that theme of that week. So whenever we did screenplays, we had kids write a screenplay. If it was an original screenplay, they had to come up with everything on their own. They were actually coming up with a new scene for the movie that we had watched. And it has to be formatted correctly, and it has to have like all of the conventions that a screenplay would have, because writing and written communication is an important, formatting is an important skill that kids need, and they've practiced APA, and they've practiced MLA, and so formatting a screenplay is another thing that they have to look at, like conventions, and then do that. Or storyboarding, we make them storyboard one of their scenes that they came up with in the previous weeks. And that, again, we're not looking for artistic style, we are looking for the conventions, those sort of set conventions that are out there for storyboarding. We make them do that. And then Thursday's a work day for them. We use it as check and connect. So we're going through, and the kids who didn't ask a question on Wednesday, or didn't want to ask a question, or didn't get to a question, we get to check and connect with them for 5 minutes or something like that. Make sure they're doing their journal right. Make sure if they have any questions about the assignment, that they get to ask that. And then we can sort of guide that assignment. Since this is an introductory class, we don't expect the screenplay formatting to be perfect. But on Check and Connect, that's when we can sort of start tweaking that stuff. And then Friday is peer-reviewed presentations. Mr. Murdoch and I will review their presentation, but they will also present whatever they worked on the day before. So Thursday's a work day, Friday is their presentation. Monday, then we'll start a new unit where we link it back to whatever that previous unit was. So after screenplay, then we go into the first visuals, which would be storyboard. The kids also have that online component that I didn't talk about. That was all the in-class stuff. Online, every week they have, by Wednesday, they have to post a question that they've had. So they've had all their readings that have been online, they've watched the movie, and then they have to actually pose their own question. Jason and I will also have posed a question, so they have to answer our question and then pose their own question. I don't know if any of you have had online courses, but it's a very similar thing to what every online class I've ever taken is formatted almost identically. And then by Friday, they have to answer 2 of their peer questions as well. And so that we get this online discussion that we didn't necessarily get on Wednesday, right? Some of the questions that Jason and I posed, or some of the questions that they posed written, are not the same things that took place in class, and so we get this extra bit of conversation, I guess, that we wouldn't get otherwise. I think that's it, yeah. This is kind of a visual that's a little bit easier to see how the week actually works. And so in class we have the introduction, and then we screen it. On Tuesdays we have the note-taking while we're screening the movie, as well as the exit pass. Wednesday is discussion, and then a work day and student presentations. And then their assignments. On Monday they have those readings that you have on Moodle, or if we bring something in. We're both, we teach a film and TV class because we're both very interested in film and TV and media. And so we are constantly seeing new things, and so we'll pull in a news story or something like that, and they'll have that sort of as another expected reading. Their journaling, as well as their exit pass, is an assignment that is actually graded to make sure that they're formatting their stuff correctly and that they're actively engaged. And then we have the discussion posts, check and connect on Thursday, and then on Friday ultimately is like all-day presentations. We have 25 kids in class. This semester, it was about the same last semester, and so if you have each kid take 3 minutes of a presentation, that takes a significant amount of time. That is each week, and then our final is actually doing each of these as a whole and creating kind of this movie pitch that they could go and they have all of this stuff. They have a screenplay or part of a screenplay. They have storyboards. They have a budget breakdown of what they think that they would need. They have actors that they would like to put in that particular movie and why they want to, like the rationale behind choosing those particular actors. They have a location in Casper that they would like want to actually like shoot this particular movie. So they've taken each week, and then for their final is a much larger, closer to 20-minute presentation that is really like a movie pitch, where they have a portfolio and they come into us and say, hey, we'd like to make this movie. Here's what it is. Here's why it would be important. Here's how much money it would cost. Here's what we would do, yay or nay. And we had a kid last year who pitched literally his own movie, and then we've had kids move on from this class to like the Wyoming Short Film Festival, and we've had students win in acting, we've had students win in editing. We aren't necessarily teaching them those particular skills. We are teaching them why those skills are important to have, and then they take that knowledge and sort of apply that to the other courses that are around the school. And speaking of the other courses that are around the school and the film festival, it would be a disservice to the kids, I think. It would be a disservice to the kids if we didn't work pretty closely with some of those other teachers. If we didn't work with the drama teacher, we didn't work with the graphic technologies teacher, like that would be a disservice to the kids. So we have these really large projects sometimes, like marketing is one of them, where our kids are going to be coming up with a marketing plan, but on the very first day of the unit, they're actually meeting with the graphic technology students and partnering up, and the graphic tech kids are going to be creating a movie poster, like a one sheet, based on the marketing idea that our film and TV or our communications kids are going to have. And so we have this interpersonal communication built in with their peers, where the graphic tech kids are working with a client, and our kids are working with like a business that they've hired, right, a producer, and then we get this final project that is a marketing plan for our kids and a movie poster from the graphic technology kids, and those kids have like I said, gone on to win Wyoming Short Film Festival.
And we didn't realize until we put this up on the screen this morning, made sure everything worked. This looks like we have corporate sponsors for our class. We truly do not. But yeah, it would be great if we could. But the reason we have the wyomovies.com logo up there is that we've actually worked out a really nice, I don't want to say partnership, but they're very eager to work with and show our kids around how a functioning movie business works. So we get to do multiple field trips throughout the year where we get to go to some of the different theaters in Casper. So we get to show them, if we go to the Rialto Theater in Casper, they get to see what the old reel-to-reel machines look like and actually get to see what a movie on film looked like back in the day, which if you've never seen like a full-blown, like I remember the reel-to-reel in classrooms when I was a kid, but these things are massive, and so they get to look at that kind of technology as well. So we study change over time as far as the concept in film and TV, but it's nice to technology-wise look at what that stuff looked like. So then they can walk them through their machinery on site, from those old reel-to-reels to digital production and things like that. And they get to talk to the people that run the movie theater and say things like, well, why is it that the price of the ticket keeps going up and popcorn's $15, popcorn in a pop is $15, and they get to realize that's where the business makes their money from. I have a really strange picture of a good friend of mine named Justin Howard, who you may recognize from a Dr. Pepper commercial a couple of years ago. He's a former graduate of not Kelly Walsh, but Natrona County High School, and then went on to Columbia College in Chicago, where he studied film editing. He got to work on the original Batman, the first of the most recent Batman trilogy, and now has a full-time job working for the Rotary Club as a film editor. He comes back every few years and is a judge at the film festival, so they get to see people that are working in film but not necessarily in Hollywood. Channel 13 gave us an opportunity to see a fully functioning production booth in Casper, where they can see people actually putting stuff on TV. And then, of course, we have other businesses as well.
The NEP group you might not recognize. They're one of the largest worldwide sellers and runners of live television broadcast equipment. They rent out trucks and trailers, and they have all of like 4 of the 16 teams in the NFL. My brother-in-law actually does the video distribution for the live video broadcast. My brother-in-law does those, and so he lives in Little Rock, but because of the advances in technology, and because he does live video broadcasting as his job, we actually get to Skype him in and talk about hey, what are things that people don't realize? Because I don't know if you guys think of Little Rock, Arkansas as the hub of live television broadcasting, but I didn't, nor do I currently. And so for somebody to live in Little Rock, Arkansas, or to sell these trucks, right? He's also has been a producer, and so we get to Skype him in, and kids literally get to just ask him questions like, hey, what are some things that I could be doing if I liked this? And the NEP group has an internship program or apprenticeship program that if kids are actually into it, that I can get them contact information and they can sort of start that job relatively quickly after high school, which is a service, I think, to the kids.
Do we have time for Q&A, or do we need to wrap up?
About a couple minutes. The next one starts in 10 minutes.
So I guess just very quickly in conclusion, this is very much a work in progress, and we've changed quite a bit even from the first year to this year. But again, it is an intro class. It's not a fully flipped classroom because it is still in a traditional high school, and we're dealing with juniors and seniors that haven't seen anything like that. And so we're trying to do some hybrid form of kind of in between to get them ready for those that are going on to college. And also just to kind of expand the possibilities of something that they're typically a passive consumer. We want them to be more of an active consumer and or possible creator. Do you guys have any questions for us? Yeah.
So since both of you teach freshmen, which is great, do you see the possibility of having that, that level of student be able to do the same thing, or do you feel like they have to kind of mature in order to be able to do this sort of class?
Part of it is maturity content-based because we don't show edited versions of the movies.
Right.
So we typically try and keep it 16 and above, and there still is a parental permission slip and that kind of stuff to make sure. But we do have, this is the first time we've had sophomores in the class. And for the most part, they've been doing fine and actually being in those elective classes where they're with upperclassmen, I think kind of, they see that maturity modeled for them in a way that they wouldn't necessarily while they're 14 or 15 years old. So that's just kind of the nature of the class so far.
And so the issues even with technology, they're adapting well to...
Yeah, we're a one-to-one district in Casper. And so they have some form, whether it be laptop or iPad or something, from 6th grade on. The only real issue for us lately has been that our school is in the process of switching from Mac to PC, because PC is just more cost effective. And so that makes things a little bit difficult for us because we're both Mac people. And when we started in the district, the entire district was Mac. So that's really the only issue we found, which Moodle tends to work great for because it's cross-platform and it's open. So it works really well for us. Anything else?
If you guys, because we sort of ran a little bit longer, there's some business, like my business cards right there. If you do have other questions or you want to get in contact with us for any reason whatsoever, or you know somebody that we should go talk to, take one of those business cards and call us up or send me an email or something along those lines.
I have a different question from a concern I have, which is students and adults knowing the difference between news and entertainment. And as somebody who avowedly gets her news from Comedy Central. So I'm just wondering, I didn't see anything in your curriculum, but I live in a county that is so Fox News heavy.
So do we.
That question I have about the winning of the narrative game right now, do you guys think that students can come out of this? I'm guessing that their heads are full of, I want to be Matt Damon, but are they also coming out with a sense of, I could tell you the difference between Fox, CNN, and Comedy Central with regard to the quality of news?
Yeah, we actually do, and we didn't mention it too much in the presentation, but during our TV unit, we actually spent about a day and a half entirely talking about the history of journalism from the free airwaves that were granted to the networks up to that change. We look at like the OJ trial and things like that in 24-hour news and how that has changed. We talk about CNN abandoning their investigative journalism in favor of more celebrity hosts. And so we do kind of walk them through that as it refers to television and the difference between journalism and just news broadcast. So we look at both. We do our best to look at both sides because we feel like that is kind of our job in public school especially. But we kind of point out the differences between what you see even on your nightly news, like the local nightly news as compared to the national nightly news, as compared to CNN or Fox News or MSNBC, and making sure that they understand the inherent bias in all of it. And it's...
I'm a social studies teacher, and so citizenship and being aware of propaganda, I guess, or being aware of propaganda is really important to me. And so, yeah, we spend a pretty, probably close to like 2.5 or 3 hours of like class time just talking about that history and the transition to the 24-hour news cycle.
and it's also going to be really exciting this next year and a half because we're coming into elections that are, I mean, each one now I think we're going to be able to say is more in our face than the previous ones have been. But we look at examples from like the 08 race and that narrative that you talked about, like the difference between Obama's narrative and Sarah Palin's narrative, for example, because there's a nice contrast there that you can show, and then we'll be able to draw stuff from current events over the next year, which we weren't able to do when we taught it last year, so, or at least not at the same level.
Thank you. The next session started at 11:15, but there is not a session in this room. So if you are willing and there are people who want to